Thank you so much, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Mrs. Obama, distinguished guests, which includes everybody. Thank you so much for this wonderful honor to be at the stage.
We spend a lot of money on health care, twice as much per capita as anybody else in the world, and yet not very efficient.
Dr. Ben Carson is the Director of Pediatric Surgery over at Johns Hopkins. Doctor, very good to have you. What did the President say to you after your remarks, Doctor?
He came over to me and said that I appreciated my speech and that he admired me and shook my hand and didn't squeeze it too hard. It was very good.
What do you mean you didn't squeeze it too hard? It was just like one of these fish kind of handshakes?
It was a good handshake.
And you had one of the most prestigious departments in all of medicine, at one of the most prestigious schools in all of medicine.
We are proud to present Dr. Ben Carson, Director of Pediatric Neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins Children's Center, a member of the President's Council on Bioethics, and co-founder of the Carson Scholars Fund, an organization whose stated goal is to provide a scholarship to at least one child in every school in the country. World-renowned for his expertise in separating twins conjoined at the head, Dr. Carson has been recognized by CNN and Time magazine as one of America's top 20 physicians and scientists, and is the recipient of numerous honors and awards, including more than 30 honorary doctorate degrees. Dr. Carson's speech is a powerful message of hope and possibility as he challenges us all to unleash the limitless potential that resides in each of us.
Thank you so much. It is so wonderful to be here with so many bright and enthusiastic people. And I'm always thrilled to be in the company of people with purpose in their lives. People like Sam and Linda, Dr. Reg and Joe, and so many of the people who really pour their hearts and souls into trying to make the environment better for other people. And I really think that that's what life should be all about. You know, money is fine, but it really doesn't amount to a hill of beans, to be honest with you. What really does mean a lot is if you can improve other people's lives. You know, when people feel good, they think good thoughts and they begin to do good things. And when you stop and you look at the life of Jesus Christ, you realize that he understood that, because every time he went someplace, what did he do? He healed people. And once he healed them physically, then they were ready to be healed mentally and spiritually. And I think that's one of the things that really caught my attention as a young person and helped me to formulate a dream of becoming a physician. Now, let me just briefly delve into how I became associated with the products of this company. You know, a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. Now, I was an individual who got annual physical examinations and had my PSA checked and did all the things that I was supposed to do. And those things were normal. But I was noticing that when I was in the operating room for long periods of time, all of a sudden I was very interested in the clock. And I never used to be interested in the clock because I didn't have to go to the bathroom. I had a big bladder and it could accommodate me for days at a time if necessary. But now I was looking at that clock and I said, you know, this represents a change. So I went to see the chief of urology at Hopkins, Dr. Pat Walsh, and he said, you know, you probably have a little prostatitis. We'll give you some antibiotic. But the symptoms did not resolve. And he said, well, maybe you got a little focal hypertrophy, so we'll give you a little Flomax. But once again, the symptoms did not resolve. At which point he said, now, what was your PSA? And he said, well, that's normal, but why don't we repeat it? I know it was just a few months ago, and we did, and this time it was slightly elevated. And he said, you're going to need to have a biopsy done. And if anyone ever told you that a prostate biopsy does not hurt, it doesn't hurt them. That's the part that they didn't tell you. Okay. I must tell you, by the time they got to about the 8th or 9th specimen, I was just saying, you know, I don't really mind if I have cancer. But at any rate, you know, when we got finished, you know, I was told that at my age, the chances of me actually having cancer were less than 18%, so I really shouldn't spend a lot of time worrying about this. And I said, nevertheless, I'd like to know the minute you know something. So the next day while I was in the operating room, I get the call, and the nurse held the phone up to my ear, and I got the devastating news that not only did I have cancer, but I had a very high-grade malignant form. And of course, I put that out of my mind and finished the operation, but it really hit me as I was going home that I had a disease that could potentially kill me. I subsequently got an MRI done to see if there was any spread. And I remember coming out of the MRI machine, I was expecting one of the radiologists to be there to say to me, everything looks fine, nothing to worry about, but there was no radiologist. And as I was leaving, one of the technicians handed me a copy of my films. Now I was a little bit concerned. And I went up to my office and I put them up on the view box, and my heart sank as I saw all those lesions up and down my spine, and I said, no. I looked at the name on the scan to make sure it was mine, and it was. And I just sat down at my desk and just started thinking. And my senior PA came in, who's been with me my entire career, and she said, what did it show? And I said, it's over there on the view board, and she went over and looked and came back with the longest face imaginable, having seen the same thing that I saw. And interestingly enough, by the next day, information had already gotten out. There was a radio station announcing that I had a glioblastoma, a malignant cancer of the brain. And then I had colon cancer, I had liver cancer, I had kidney cancer, I had bone cancer, I had skin cancer, you name it, I had it. I was dying. I had died already. One lady called my office and she said, I heard Dr. Carson was dead. I want to speak to him, you know. So it was quite an interesting time. But because all of that news had gotten out, I started getting so many products from all over the world. People were sending me grasses and herbs and fruits and pills and teas and juices, and it was unbelievable. I mean, I could have started a store with all the stuff that people had given me. But one of the fathers of one of my patients asked me if I had ever heard anything about glyconutrients. And I said, well, you know, I've certainly heard the term, but I didn't know anything specific about them. And he gave me the website, and I subsequently contacted Dr. Reg, and we had quite a conversation about possibilities. And he sent me some product and prescribed a regimen. And I started taking the product. And within about 3 weeks, my symptoms went away. And I was really quite amazed. And I actually toyed with the ideal of not having surgery done because it was recommended to me that I undergo surgery. And I was saying, well, if my symptoms went away in 3 weeks, maybe this could be controlled. And I started reading more about the theory behind it, the bolstering of the immune system. And of course, the immune system is the thing that detects and destroys cancers. We are all producing cancers all the time. But if we have healthy immune systems, they're able to identify and destroy them. And I was saying, this makes an awful lot of sense. But then I began to realize that having a high profile, that if I did that, a lot of other people might follow that example too, but they may not be quite as diligent as I was about taking the product, and there would be a lot of needless deaths, and I didn't feel as though I could have that on my conscience. So I went ahead and had the surgery done. Now, interestingly enough, I got, along with all the products, so many cards and so many letters from everybody imaginable, from the lowliest people you can imagine to members of the president's cabinet, senators, anchors of the major news broadcasts, President and Mrs. Bush. Everybody said they were praying for me. And I think the Lord just got tired of hearing about me because, it turns out that the findings on the MRI represented a congenital anomaly of the bone marrow, and it wasn't metastatic cancer at all. And I was able to go ahead and have the surgery done by Dr. Walsh, who invented the nerve-sparing prostatectomy. It turns out the cancer was within 1 millimeter of breaking through, but it hadn't broken through and was able to be removed in its entirety. And I'm cured today. Now, some people have concluded that I was cured without surgery and that I was just cured by the glyconutrients. Maybe would have happened, maybe would not have. But, I do not advocate abandoning traditional medical cures that have been shown to work. What I would, however, advocate is using natural products to supplement what's done by traditional medicine. The two things do not have to be adversarial. In fact, they can be really extremely complementary. Now, that's the story of how I got involved. I'm not a Manatech associate. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to be one. I'm not a Manatech spokesman. I don't think that would be appropriate either. I do refer people to appropriate people. I do not make any claims of being an expert in the area of glyconutritionals. I don't plan to become an expert in that area because there are other people who are already extremely well versed in that area. So please don't tell people to call me to talk about this. It's amazing how many calls and emails and letters we get about this, just tons of them. And it's not appropriate. There are other people who are very good at this, but we are figuring out ways to channel those people without me actually having to spend any time involved in doing that. I still take the products today, every single day. My wife takes them too. We're on the regular plan where we get our stuff every month. And for you to understand why, out of all the many, many products that I received when people thought I was going to die, why is it that this is the one that I chose to stick with? To understand that, you would have to understand a little bit about me. and why I think the way I do. You know, I was always only interested in medicine. Now, the medical community is a particularly difficult group to get through to. It's because when you're talking about nutrition, you're talking a foreign language to them. Because doctors don't learn about nutrition, for the most part, in medical school. But doctors are not the problem. Doctors are generally very, very interested in anything that's going to make their patients better. And they are not the problem. It's the establishment, the medical establishment, not the doctors themselves, who tend, I think, sometimes to like to maintain the status quo. Because if everybody were well, then they would be out of business. And they don't want to be out of business. Doctors would love to be out of business, but they know that there's always going to be plenty of sickness to go around. So you're not going to generally find individual physicians who are trying to suppress something that is doing good. Doctors do have a tendency, because of their training, however, to want to see data. They want to see the double-blind prospective study that was carefully designed, that has a statistically significant variation that they can sink their teeth into and say that this works better than this. And I think that that's one of the projects that this company is in the process of working on. And I'll tell you, once that happens, it is going to be phenomenal. You think things are great now. Once the medical community is able to see the benefit of what is going on, it's going to be phenomenal. Because think about this. God provided in our diets everything that we needed to keep our bodies healthy. You know, the immune system absolutely has to have the right building blocks in order to work. The reparative processes of our bodies, like you scrape your skin, do you notice how quickly that heals? You get a corneal abrasion, how quickly that heals? Because of the way the reparative process comes in and starts working so rapidly. That has to have the right fundamental structure beneath it, the correct nutritional structure beneath it. And if you go to somebody who is malnourished and you put a scratch on their skin, it doesn't heal. You scratch their eye, it doesn't heal. It festers. It becomes infected. Bad things begin to happen. So it tells you how important that nutritional status is, and God provided that for us. However, we have become so incredibly sophisticated that we process our foods to the nth degree, and we manage to get all of that good stuff out of them. And then consequently, we think we're eating well, and we're certainly getting plenty of calories out of it, and we're getting very fat. But being fat is not equivalent to being well nourished. And what we have to do is begin to educate people about how you put the building blocks back into their diet. Now, the ideal thing would be for all of us to go back to the Garden of Eden. We wouldn't need glyconutritionals. We wouldn't need anything. All we have to do is eat the wonderful fruits and vegetables that God provided for us. That's not practical because the Garden of Eden is no longer here. Well, the next best thing is maybe if we could all have a fresh, organic diet, and we could drink 6 to 8 glasses of pure water every day, and we could exercise regularly, and we could get plenty of rest, and we could take the stress out of our lives, then we could also be very healthy. But how many of us are going to do that? So given the fact that, we're relatively lazy, and we live in a modern world, now we got to ask ourselves, what can we do to get as close to that natural diet as possible? And that's where nutrition comes in. And that's where finding the right kinds of supplementary products comes in. And you can do your own research in terms of which products are the best. But as I looked around, with all the various things that I had access to, you can see where I'm standing tonight.